Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Had a great show with Bill Troy, founder of the Polaris Institute. Bill, thanks for coming on. Why don't you share a little bit with the audience and our listeners about your journey and what's happened from a personal transformation perspective with you over the past several years?
Yeah, sure. So, I had an entrepreneurial journey that was, by all measures, successful. And at the end of that, didn't feel like a success. Didn't feel happy about it. And was wrestling with what was going on there and realized that the answer wasn't out there. The answer was in here. And it was really about mindset, about what is happiness? What was I chasing? What was I after? And I did a lot of research on the latest brain science that's come out and found that there are some amazing things that have been discovered in the last few years about how our brains work, what leads us to try to chase those goals, what leads us to try to find happiness, and whether we get there or not. And was very excited about that. And so we're building the Polaris Institute to spread that to other people.
That's wonderful. On that note, what does the latest brain science tell us about how we can change our lives in ways that maybe seem impossible to folks?
Yeah, well, that's the crazy part, is that they've actually been able to prove now how much our brain is creating the reality we're experiencing. We think we're touching this table or sitting in this chair. And when you put yourself into an MRI machine, you can find out that you're actually, while you are sitting in a chair, the feeling of that chair is being generated. Your brain's going, oh, we're sitting in a chair, create that experience. And so they can actually start to see how your brain is creating the experience you're living. And it's using past memories to do that. It's using how it's learned what things are in the past, like what is money, what is success, what is happiness. And those may not have been the best examples ever to learn. And you may be chasing things that are not what you really want them to be. So you can, if you're creating it yourself, you can create what you want it to be, which sounds a bit, out there, but we've got the brain science to prove it.
And bias has always been, I think, when people talk about personal bias, that's a bad word. It's a scary word. What does your institute say about bias, and how do you view it?
Bias is just the way our brains work. Our brains are taking shortcuts. Our brains are trying to make things simple all the time. And so they're always sort of just like making a quick snap judgment of what's going on and what's happened. And they're also only able to use what they've ever seen in their lives, right? So I can only experience, life the way anything I've ever seen in my own past. So bias is just normal operating function for our brain. And when it's bias that creates some harm, of course, that's negative bias, but bias is just normal brain function. So the idea that we're biased is not a bad thing. It's a thing that allows us to actually change the bias. Oh, I could be biased in a different way. I could be biased happy instead of biased angry or something, right? So the bias is an opportunity.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, for our audience too, make sure you listen. Awesome show. Bill actually brought to the table some opening remarks, which we enjoyed. So you'll have to listen to learn a little bit more about Columbus. But as far as your contact info, Bill, why don't you share with our audience again?
Sure. The website's polarisinstitute.net, and my email is bill@polarisinstitute.net. So very simple.
And make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, we are on any streaming service, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're everywhere. So appreciate everyone joining us again. Have a great week.